Let's now discuss the concrete benefits that ERM provides to organizations. So first, ERM considers all possible risk avenues together instead of separately. This integrated view is extremely important because sources of risks are often linked together, as we saw earlier. The currency fluctuation might affect your input cost, which affects your pricing, which affects your competitive position. So managing currency risk in isolation misses all these downstream effects. Second, because risks are interconnected, the impacts of risk are often amplified if multiple risks happen at the same time. This is sometimes called risk aggregation or compounded risk. A recession combined with a supply chain disruption, for example, combined with a key executive departure, is far worse than any of these events individually. So ERM helps organizations think about and prepare for compound scenarios like this. Third, ERM helps organizations think about and prepare for the combinations of bad scenarios instead of one bad scenario at a time. So traditional risk management might ask, what if we have a supplier failure? ERM instead will ask, what if we have a supplier failure during a recession while also facing a cybersecurity attack? This more realistic approach to scenario planning builds true organization resilience. Next, ERM guidelines help create a risk profile that can be easily understood by outsiders. So this is increasingly important as investors, regulators, and other stakeholders are asking for greater transparency about organizational risk. So a well-developed ERM program will produce a clear, comprehensive risk reporting that meets these expectations. So in summary then, one of the most powerful benefits of ERM is that it helps organizations think about and prepare for a combination of bad scenarios instead of one bad scenario at a time, and also helps create a risk profile that can be shared with regulators and investors and other stakeholders as well. So let's consolidate all of this discussion about ERM benefits and summarize everything. So ERM considers all sources of risk holistically, not individually. This integrated perspective ensures that we're not over-managing some risks while neglecting others. Because we see the full picture of organizational risk exposure, we can allocate resources accordingly. The second point we discussed is that ERM can analyze the relationship between risk sources. This is important because, as we saw, risk never happen in isolation. Currency risk affects pricing risk, supply chain risk affects operational risk, regulatory risk affects strategic risk, and so on. So ERM provides the frameworks for mapping and understanding all these interconnections and relationships. Third, we talked about interdependencies between the risk factors, okay, that can be identified and managed appropriately. So once we understand how risks are connected, we can design mitigation strategies that address multiple risks simultaneously, or at least avoid strategies that reduce one risk while increasing another. And fourth, ERM allows for an organized risk profile that can be shared easily. And this makes communication with boards, executive regulators, investors, and other stakeholders much, much easier. So for all organizations, ERM enables a better understanding of the risk that is associated with any and all activities that the organization engages in. This comprehensive understanding is essential for good decision making. Okay, for example, consider a company that's looking at whether or not to enter a new market. Without ERM, different departments might offer different perspectives. So sales sees a revenue opportunity, finance worries about the investments required, legal maybe flags some additional regulatory complexities and requirements. Operations might question the supply chain implications. So each perspective is valid, but is incomplete. Now with ERM, the organization can conduct an integrated risk assessment that considers all these dimensions together, and then answers the questions: what are the market risks, what are the operational risks, financial risks, and so on. And then finally, decide what's the aggregated risk profile of this specific opportunity and compare it to the risk tolerance and appetite for the organization. So this comprehensive understanding will then allow the organization to better allocate its resources to ensure that the organization remains stable in the face of its internal or external environment. Resources, as we know, are finite. So ERM will help us put priorities in place and direct resources toward the risks that matter most to our objectives while accepting or monitoring lower priority risks. So by effectively managing the risks and implementing risk management strategies, then organizations not only will reduce the risk surface and exposure, but will also increase stakeholders' confidence in the firm. And this confidence has real value. Why? Because when investors, lenders, customers, and partners evaluate an organization, they're not just looking at the current performance, but also the future prospects. And future prospects are uncertain, of course, okay, because they will depend on how well the organization can navigate the risks that it will face. So an organization that demonstrates mature risk management capabilities will signal that it's prepared for uncertainty, meaning that it has thought through potential challenges and that it has plans to address them. As a result, stock prices may become less volatile as investors know that the firm is aware of its risk and that there are measures in place to mitigate them. This reduced volatility is not just a nice to have feature, but it actually has important financial implications for the organization. Okay, just because volatile stock prices make it harder to use equity for acquisition, for example, harder to keep employees with stock-based compensation, and harder to maintain investor confidence during market downturns. So companies with more stable stock price have more strategic flexibility. So Then decreasing the volatility of the stock price and earnings, as we just discussed, are effective risk management. Reduces the likelihood of negative surprises that cause stock price drops and earnings misses, which gives more predictable performance, which will in turn build investor confidence and support a higher valuation for the organization. It will also reduce external capital costs. So organizations with strong risk management are perceived as safer by lenders and investors. This perception will translate into lower interest rate on debt and potentially higher valuations for the equity of the company. So over time, even small reductions in capital costs can add up to significant savings. Also, better understanding of risk activities. So ERM creates frameworks and processes for systematically identifying, analyzing, and monitoring risk. Okay, so this institutionalization essentially makes it easier for the company to continue to operate normally when the heads of or individual managers leave the company, because the organization retains its risk understanding. Better resource allocation, as we said, this is probably the most fundamental benefits of ERM. So with limited resources, organization must make choices about where to invest in risk mitigation, and ERM provides information and frameworks to make these choices intelligently. Directing resources will have the greatest impact.